Alright everyone, welcome to Thursday's video. Later on we will have a bit of insight on Aberdeen from an Aberdeen supporter. We've also got a few other stories to touch on today, but that's not important everyone, because we've got a comment in from Steve Catterson saying, "Hi Hamish, really enjoy the content, but I have a huge request to ask of you. Please edit the musical staring jingle to remove the 3 or 4 alarm sound beeps at the start of each episode. I hate it so much. Triggers PTSD or something. I always scramble for the mute button and normally don't get there in time, spilling over tea, oh dear, etc. in the process. The jingle's fine, it's just the alarm clock beeps that trigger me. I feel this little change would elevate the podcast from a 9 to a 10 out of 10. Cheers, mate." It's not that bad, surely. Anyway, Steve, I take complaints, criticisms, feedback seriously. However, it's the first comment I've had in this, so I'm not going to ditch them completely until we get a swathe of other comments. However, I am going to turn it down significantly just so that you don't get the same PTSD. So this is for you, Steve. There we go. Hopefully the tea is still in the mug, Steve. Thank you very much for your support and kind words for the channel. Right, we'll move it on. And yeah, we do have a couple of things to talk about today. Things are actually happening. And as we head back into this busy period, and some of you rejoin us after taking the international break off, and genuinely, I don't blame you for just wanting a wee bit of a break for the past 10 days or so. Just a wee call to action for those of you who aren't yet subscribed to the channel, just to do so. Please do that. It costs you absolutely nothing. It's incredibly easy to do, and it means so much to me and the rest of the gang who are trying to grow this channel. So please, I am literally begging you, subscribe and get us to 11,000 subscribers as soon as possible. We'll be there before I can say John Lundstrom is the greatest on earth, if that's even the words. It might be best, I don't really know. Another wee thing just to mention again, and again, it costs you absolutely nothing. Every video that you watch here on Celtic AM is also available as an audio-only podcast on your chosen podcast platform. So you can listen if you're out and about. It's incredibly handy. It's been very popular so far, and I know a lot of you had requested it prior. So yeah, please head over to your chosen podcast app and follow or download or whatever you do to register to Celtic AM. The links for your likely chosen podcast app are in the description, by the way. So yeah, 2 things I want from you, and I'll love you even more than I do right now if you manage to do this. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and also follow Celtic AM wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, legends. Right, let's move on. Celtic have confirmed the appointment of Paul Tisdale as our head of football operations. Now, reading from the official club statement, in this new strategic role reporting to the board, Paul will oversee the development and management of effective operations to support high-level football performance. It's very business speak, this. We shouldn't really be surprised. Including the identification and development of talent in line with the club's objective to develop Champions League players through our academy and recruitment processes. Additionally, Paul will work with the club's analytics functions, supporting colleagues across the club to continuously improve our processes. So, anyway, he reports to the board, so Paul Tisdale will report to the board, and he's been tasked with delivering high-level football performance. So that's basically the job in a nutshell, to get Celtic to the highest level football performance. He'll be involved in recruitment, he'll be involved in the youth academy. As much as they're obviously very different departments, they both have similar aims in terms of having Champions League level players eventually produced for the Celtic first team. So that's the target. He'll be involved in both of those departments. He'll also, as Celtic say, work in analytics, and he'll hopefully be able to raise the standards of several departments inside the club. He's basically been brought in to improve standards, improve practices, make things work smoother, make things work better. He coined himself the football doctor in an interview a few months ago. So that kind of explains what he does. He goes into clubs and makes things better, healthier, just like a normal doctor. I think in terms of the recruitment, that's the bit that people are going to be most focused on here. It's fair to say that department needs a new face, someone to drive standards, because the last few windows haven't been particularly great. I know we appear to have had a decent enough summer window eventually, but things took far too long. Virtually every signing we made could have been done quicker, in my view. And hopefully he can be brought in to improve standards. I mean, you've literally had Brendan Rodgers saying that it wasn't good enough going into the final week of the window. So it's clear that things have to improve in terms of recruitment. Hopefully Tisdale can help with that, as well as the academy and analytics, and I'm sure various other things he's taken charge of. Seems like he was helping us out during the summer, by the way. Again, not sure in what regard, but he was certainly at the Queen's Park friendly, the second pre-season match that we played, so he's clearly been working with the club throughout the summer. Michael Nicholson, quoted as saying, "We are certain that he will bring great experience, energy and innovation to what we do, working alongside Brendan, our football manager, Chris McCart, head of academy, and our excellent wider football staff to bring further development and success to the club." Brendan Rodgers says, "Paul knows modern football inside out. He understands what we need as a club, what our team needs to operate at a high level, and how we can develop positively and successfully across a number of functions within the club. I have known Paul for some time and have been well aware of his work. I know that he will be a huge asset to Celtic, and that his knowledge, talent and tremendous work ethic will be crucial to us as we drive forward across a number of areas, always with the aim of delivering higher performance and more success." As always with these things, he'll be judged on what actually happens when he's at the club rather than what's said about him around his appointment. He'll be judged on the quality of the signings that we make. He'll be judged, I guess, on the amount of players we can get through the academy into the first team, which seems quite a tall order at this stage, and various other areas as well. So certainly Brendan Rodgers, Michael Nicholson talking positively about this, and it will be interesting to see if we do see genuine improvement going forward. And yeah, interesting to see if we hear from Paul Tisdale, whether he conducts any interviews throughout his time at the club, even online statements, just to find out a bit more about what he's doing and what's going on at the club, because I think that's one of the things as supporters that we crave is that communication and insight from the club. And maybe that's an unrealistic expectation, I don't know, but we'll wait and see if Paul Tisdale can help with that. That announcement wasn't the only correspondence that we had from Celtic yesterday. We also had a statement from the club confirming that the UEFA Control, Ethics and Disciplinary Body had sanctioned us again for the lighting of fireworks at a European match. Now, if you watched the pre-match build-up to the recent Dortmund game, you'll know we're talking about that game. The body, UEFA, have fined the club €20,000 and dished out a suspended ban on selling tickets to away fans for one UEFA match. Now, as I say, suspended ban, so that means that the ban is suspended for a probationary period of 2 years, starting from the date of the present decision, so yesterday. Basically, if we fall foul of that law again in the next 2 years, there'll be a UEFA away match where we won't have any away fans, which would be a real shame, it's fair to say. We've been falling foul of this rule in the past. Leipzig away, for example, when we had flares set off before the game. And, you know, you can have debates on whether pyro should or should not be allowed. I'm actually generally in favour of pyro. I do think it adds something to the atmosphere. But I'm not, like, completely for it, and that I do understand that for some people it is a hazard. Well, I guess for everyone it is a hazard to an extent, but some people more than others with various ailments or whatever. So yeah, I don't feel massively strongly about it, but I do actually feel strongly about this point that we're now basically on the verge of a away ban, and I would seriously hope that the Celtic support going forward, and I assume this includes home European matches as well as away matches, I would hope that we're on our best behaviour basically, and just for the next 2 years we don't see any more lighting of fireworks, as UEFA would say, because it would be a real shame if we had an away Champions League match, for example, and weren't able to have Celtic fans there. Celtic feel the same, obviously. The statement they wrote, the club has been very clear over a number of years that the use of fireworks and pyrotechnics at matches is prohibited and presents risks to supporter safety and to the club under the applicable regulations. It is hugely disappointing, therefore, that the conduct of a very small minority has led to this decision, which could potentially have such a negative and damaging impact on the team and Celtic supporters wishing to attend an away match to support the team. So yes, no real excuses now, I would say. Elsewhere, we had the October edition of the SFA's The VAR Review. Gordon Duncan and Willie Collum. I actually quite enjoy this as a show. I'll put it out there right away that I don't always or maybe often agree with the actual decision they come to, but I quite enjoy just watching it as an interesting show to hear what the VAR officials are saying, to look at some of the incidents and then to get an explanation from Willie Collum. I actually think this is a good idea, and I quite enjoy watching it, as I say, even though I don't always agree. There was one Celtic related incident on the most recent show, and it was the Liam Scales penalty that was given against him against Hearts and was then overturned by the referee. I think it was Nick Walsh, and in fact no, it wasn't. I don't think it was someone else who I can't remember. Fabulous stuff. But basically Willie Collum came to the conclusion that the decision had been right because the ball had struck Scales on the shoulder, which is not a punishable part of the arm. You can tell I've been listening too much to this stuff. The t-shirt line's important for handball. So stuff like that's quite interesting. Also interesting, I think for the first time, to get a look of the VAR studio on match day, which I found kind of amusing for some reason. Just watching all the different angles of Celtic beating Hearts. Anyway, that's what's going on at the moment, but let's shift attention to our opponents this weekend now, Aberdeen, and find out all about how they've been doing very well from my good pal Ryan, who is a Dons fan and runs the popular Red Point of View. It must be a pretty good time to be an Aberdeen fan, Ryan.
Well, thanks for having me on, Hamish, first and foremost. Good to chat again. Absolutely. I mean, it's a nice change from the last few years, that's to be said anyway, from the Darvel debacle to getting battered at Tynecastle and Easter Road. It's good to see us start the season relatively hopeful for a change. Obviously, a bit reminiscent of that 15-16 season or 16-17 season, I think it was, when we won 7 in a row as well that time round. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's a nice, refreshing change, as I say, and good to see us playing some good football for a change as well.
So you've got 13 wins from 13 in all competitions this season. If you go further back, 17 wins from your last 18 since the Scottish Cup semi-final that I won't mention anymore. A draw in there as well. So it's been a pretty remarkable run. What are the expectations then like amongst the Aberdeen support going into your toughest test of the season this weekend?
Yeah, it's notoriously a bad venue for us and most other Scottish teams, to be fair, but I think you can only be hopeful. Everyone's kind of had a bit of a pop at Aberdeen over the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks, saying they've not really played anyone. When will the big tests come for them? They'll see how they get on in that middle to October, end of November run, which obviously probably started last week against Hearts, which Hearts were probably the better team in that game. But good teams find a way to win when they're not playing well. So it's good to see us have that kind of mentality back. I think Aberdeen over the last few seasons would have crumbled and lost that game. So it couldn't be in a better place going into the game against Celtic at the weekend. I think it's in stark contrast to the last time we spoke. I think we spoke about the semi-final when everything was just completely doom and gloom, and that was a complete surprise performance on that day. So obviously a bit different as well going to Celtic Park. I think everyone would be delighted or bite your hand off for a draw. An narrow defeat, given our recent record at Celtic Park as well, wouldn't be a disaster. Just anything that can come out of the game with some positives and doesn't completely derail that kind of start to the season, pretty much.
Okay, interesting. So are there Aberdeen fans out there who think you can win this weekend? Because I when we played Borussia Dortmund recently, and you'll know how that went, but I was one of those who maybe felt something special was in the air because we were on such a long winning run, and obviously you guys are going into this game. So I guess there will be Aberdeen fans out there, maybe even yourself, that thinks you can go and win on Saturday given how you're playing.
I mean, I probably don't think we can go and win, which might be the wrong mentality to go into the game with, but it's just when you look at Celtic's record at Celtic Park, I mean, you'll know better than me how many games you've lost in the league there over the past 10 years. I think you can count on one hand, to be honest. So it's a formidable task. And obviously Celtic, bar that game against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League, have had an excellent start to their season as well. I think it's one of your best starts to the season in your history as well. Not the best, but one of. So Celtic are in a good place at the minute. And unfortunately, the case is that if Celtic are at the top of their game, then they're more than likely going to win. We need a kind of off day from Celtic and us to be playing very well to take anything from the game. So I think, being realistic, I'm not expecting a win, but I don't think we could be better placed to kind of go and get that, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, okay, that's realistic. That's fine. What about Jimmy Talleen? Take it he's a bit of a god up north right now.
Yeah, a Norse god. He's been brilliant. I really like his attitude when it comes to dealing with the media. We've had previous managers like Jim Goodwin who spoke a bit too much for my liking in the media. Stephen Glass, who just kind of didn't really manage to get his message across in the media or even to the players. And then Barry Robson, who said a lot of the wrong things last season. So Talleen's style with the media has, along with his football, obviously, won him a lot of plaudits from the Aberdeen fans. And then just the way he's got the team playing from the outset. And I think a lot of people have touched on it, but guys who have been out the picture over the past 2 seasons, he's getting the best out of them, which is testament to kind of his ability as a manager.
So how would you sum up his like press conferences then? Is he quite... Because I think Brendan Rodgers maybe used the word calm the other days. Would that kind of sum up how he comes across?
Yeah, very calm, grounded, realistic. His media training is exceptional. I think he's the one that wrote the handbook for media training, going by his interviews. He's never going to be the one that you'll get a hot-headed quote from after the game or anything that creates a headline. I think the Swedish media described him as, when he first came over, as boring, but in a good way, if you know what I mean. So he's not the type of guy that journalists will like to try and get a headline or a quote from, because he's just going to give you the same boring answers all the time. But obviously that kind of level-headed, grounded attitude is transferring well to the players. I imagine he's pretty similar behind the scenes as well.
How good a manager do you think he actually is? Like, what kind of level could he go to?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, saw a few articles this week with linking him with a move to Wolves, but yeah, obviously we're playing Celtic this weekend, so can't be much truth in those. It's difficult to say. It's early days. I mean, he's only been at Aberdeen for 3-4 months. Obviously, been an exceptional start to the season. But if he keeps going the way he's going, he can obviously get a move down south, wherever that's where he wants to be. That's another story. He's not going to be the type of guy that gives away his intentions, as I say, in the media. But it's very telling for me, as I said, that the ability he's managed to get out of these players like Papi Guy and Bazowan and Shaden Morris, who were basically a foot out the door last season. You have to be pretty good to get 13 wins on the bounce as well, coming into a new club. So, as a lot of people have said as well, I think we'll find out a lot more about what he's about up until Christmas, when those tougher games start coming around.
And what is the kind of style of football been like, and how do you think the team will be set up for the game on Saturday?
Interestingly, the games that we've played so far, even though people have pointed to an easy start, Tuline's style isn't really about controlling the game or controlling possession and putting teams under pressure. It's very much about hitting teams on the counter quickly and getting from one end of the pitch to the other in 2 or 3 passes and then getting the ball into the box. So I actually think his style of football is better suited to games against like Celtic, Rangers, away at Hearts, Hibs. So I'm very intrigued to see how we get on Saturday, because his Elfsborg teams really, they made a name for themselves against games against Malmo and the kind of bigger teams in the Swedish league for their sort of impressive victories, the way he like set the team up, rather than the kind of regular wins against the teams you should be expecting to beat, which is obviously important as well. But it's those bigger games that he's impressed at Elfsborg, so it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on at Aberdeen with the same.
Okay, in terms of players, you mentioned a few of them already. I think Gay's injured, isn't he? He's going to be missing for a while. So who are the players that the Celtic support will have to, or the Celtic team as well, will have to keep an eye on this weekend?
I mean, I think most impressive has been our midfield signings, which it'll be super interesting to see how they compete against Celtic. That's obviously where Celtic are very good and where they dominate most games, and how you get your wins is just by being of a much better quality in that centre of the pitch. But Nielsen, that we signed from Brann, and Palaversa as well, who used to be at Man City. Both of them are, I mean, excellent players. I don't know. Well, Palaversa's obviously had his injury worries and issues over the past few seasons. That's why he's ended up at us. But he does look a level above. And just the players that were there last season as well. I mean, a lot of that squad, not really too much has changed. Like McGrath's made an unbelievable start to the season. Nisbet's obviously come in, started scoring goals. And defensively as well, it's been pretty stable. So I think the key area of the pitch to watch out for is that middle of the pitch at the weekend. And Shinnie looks like a man reborn with Nielsen and Clarkson or Palaversa beside him. It's night and day what he's like this season compared to like last.
Yeah, and you've had a few players away in international duty, significantly more players in the Scotland squad than Celtic, so we could see some sort of effect there, possibly international weariness from Aberdeen on Saturday. Maybe.
There's been quite a few, obviously. I mean, I didn't touch on even Keskinen in the last question there, who's obviously been a big investment for us this season. I think it's near enough £1 million, who's again come in, looked class and scored a couple of important goals already. He's away, Mitov was away, Rubezic, McGrath, and then obviously the 3 Scotland boys, Mackenzie, Devlin, Shinnie, and Keskin as well. So maybe, but
Nisbet as well?
Aye, Nisbet. The professional footballers at the end of the day, I mean, there's only so much that kind of comes into it. I was kind of banking on Hearts being terrible on the Sunday we played them after their trip out to Azerbaijan, but they were right up for it and looked fresh, and we were the kind of team that looked a bit leggy. So I think there's only so much of an element that these kind of travel weariness comes into.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be interesting because I've not really seen much of Aberdeen this season. I've not watched a single full Aberdeen match. You've not really had many games on TV, and I've not even really seen much from the manager. But you've just seen every week Aberdeen keep winning. So I'm intrigued to see how you fare on Saturday and what level you're at. What would you say the target is right now for Aberdeen? Is it third place, second place, first place? What do you think?
I was actually having this conversation the other week with our good pal Matthew, who you'll know well. It would be a shame if we didn't end up seeing finishing third as having a good season. Obviously, the start we've made has been unbelievable, but the target objective at the start of the season was third. So all this chat around splitting the old firm and pushing Celtic all the way is brilliant, and maybe we can shuffle those objectives if you get into the new year and we're still within touching distance. But I think it's important to remember that Taline's just come in. He said when he came into the job that it would be a 3-year process. So I think finishing third, getting back into European football is the objective first and foremost, and then anything beyond that is we can worry about that if we're still winning games in December, January.
And 1,100 tickets, I think, Ryan, did you manage to get one for Saturday?
I didn't know, actually. They sold out pretty quickly.
Yeah. How
1,100.
many could you have sold, do you think, if you'd had unlimited? Would you sold 3,000 or 4,000 for this?
Well, Celtic have there's always the option for the clubs to buy the extra seats, isn't there? But the seats, I think, clubs don't buy it in case they don't sell it, because they have to then obviously pick up the cost. I would probably have said 2,500 would have been a realistic Saturday afternoon, 3:00, not on the TV, which is good to see, even though it is our kind of prime game. We don't do ourselves any favours not marketing it, but good to see it's on 3:00 on a Saturday, just for the people who are going. Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, I won't ask you for a prediction or anything like that, but I do appreciate you coming on and giving some insight, and we'll catch up with you at some stage in the future. Thanks very much, mate.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on.
Fabulous stuff. Always good to hear from fans of other teams. Unless you're that one person who commented last week saying you don't want to hear of any other teams, you only want to hear of Celtic fans. Hopefully that's not annoyed you too much. We'll continue the build-up to Saturday's game tomorrow when John will be back on with me. And finally, before we finish today, a good luck message to Celtic women, who have a pretty big Champions League match this evening. Away to Real Madrid, the Alfredo Di Stefano they're playing at. Pretty cool place to play. Not quite the Bernabeu, but the next rung down in terms of Real Madrid. Probably going to be a case of keeping the score down for Elena Sadiko's side tonight, I would guess. Just a huge gulf between ourselves and the likes of Real Madrid, who are second in the Spanish league at the moment. But you never know what could happen. So that game's on this evening. It's an early kickoff, I think 5:45 it is. So you can check that out. I will return tomorrow with John.